The evening air carried a hint of autumn, as Lily tied her waitress apron tightly around her waist. "Just another Thursday," she whispered to herself, trying to ignore the ache in her feet. She had been on shift since noon, but couldn't afford to turn down the evening hours, not with Grandma Rose's medical bills piling up on the kitchen table. Rosewood was the kind of restaurant where people came to be seen. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, casting warm light over tables draped in pristine white cloths. In the far corner sat a magnificent grand piano, polished black and gleaming, but mostly for show. The owner had bought it at an auction years ago, claiming it added class to the establishment, though it was rarely played except on special occasions when they hired a professional. To Lily, the piano was both a friend and a reminder of dreams deferred. Sometimes, during quiet afternoons when she arrived early for her shift, she would stand near it, fingers hovering above the keys without touching them. Staff weren't allowed to play it, that was a strict rule. "Table 12 needs water refills," called Tina, the head waitress, snapping Lily back to reality. "And 16 just got seated with 6 people. It's the group that called ahead." Lily nodded, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. On it, the restaurant was busier than usual for a weeknight, the buzz of conversation and clink of silverware creating that familiar symphony she'd grown accustomed to over the past 3 years. She moved between tables with practiced efficiency, balancing plates and remembering specific requests without writing them down. It was a skill she'd developed out of necessity. The better the service, the better the tips. When she wasn't at the restaurant, Lily spent most of her time caring for Grandma Rose, who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 8. Rose had been everything to her: mother, father, teacher, and the one who had scraped together enough money for those precious piano lessons Lily had loved so much as a child. "The universe has given you a gift," Rose used to say as Lily practiced. "Your fingers tell stories that your voice never could." But when Rose's health began failing 2 years ago, Lily had put everything on hold. The acceptance letter from the music conservatory still sat in her bedside drawer, edges worn from the many times she'd taken it out just to look at it, to remember what could have been. "Heads up, everyone," the restaurant manager Paul announced during a brief lull. "We've got a VIP coming in tonight. Blake Wilson and his group. They've reserved the large corner booth." A ripple of tension went through the staff. Everyone knew about Blake Wilson, the tech genius who'd made his first million before turning 25 and hadn't stopped accumulating wealth since then. His company had revolutionized something to do with artificial intelligence. Lily wasn't clear on the details, but she knew his name and face from countless magazine covers and news segments. "He's a big tipper if he likes you," whispered Tina. "But I've heard he can be demanding." Paul cleared his throat. "I'm assigning Lily to his table." "Me?" Lily's eyes widened. "But Tina usually handles the VIPs. Tina will be busy with the party of 12 coming in for the Johnson anniversary. Besides," Paul added with a meaningful look, "Wilson specifically requested our most competent server after his last visit. That's you." The compliment should have felt good, but instead it settled like a weight on Lily's shoulders. More pressure. More expectations. Still, she nodded. They needed the business, and she needed the tips. At precisely 8 o'clock, the front door swung open, and Blake Wilson strode in as if he owned the place. He was taller than Lily had expected, dressed in a casual yet obviously expensive dark suit with no tie, his sandy hair artfully tousled. 4 others followed him, 2 men and 2 women, all looking equally wealthy and confident. Paul practically tripped over himself greeting them, leading the group to the corner booth that offered both privacy and a view of the entire restaurant. Lily gave them a few minutes to settle in before approaching with her most professional smile. "Good evening, welcome to Rosewood. My name is Lily, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you with something from the bar?" Blake Wilson looked up, his eyes a startling blue, scanning her face with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. It wasn't the appreciative glance men sometimes gave her. It was more like he was assessing her value, the way someone might appraise furniture. "You're new," he said, though it wasn't a question. "I've worked here for 3 years." "Sir," Lily responded politely. One of the women laughed. "That's practically a lifetime in restaurant years." Blake ignored the comment. "We'll start with 2 bottles of the Chateau Margaux 2009. Lily's heart skipped. That wine was nearly $4,000 a bottle. Excellent choice, sir. I'll bring that right away. As she walked to the wine cellar, Lily did the math in her head. The bill for this table would likely exceed what she made in a month. The thought was both exhilarating and depressing. The evening progressed with the Wilson party getting progressively louder as they consumed the expensive wine. They ordered nearly everything on the menu, sampling dishes and sometimes sending them back after just one bite. With each passing hour, their behavior grew more entitled, snapping fingers to get attention, making special requests that required the chef to create off-menu items, laughing too loudly at private jokes. Lily maintained her composure, even when one of the men in the group accidentally brushed his hand against her as she served their third round of drinks. She had learned long ago that in this business, the customer was always right, especially when that customer could leave a tip that would cover Grandma's medication for a month. Near the end of their meal, as Lily was clearing plates, she overheard snippets of their conversation. "Absolutely boring evening," one of the women sighed. "I thought you said this place had character, Blake." Blake Wilson swirled the last of his wine, looking around the restaurant with half-lidded eyes. "The food's decent. Atmosphere's lacking, though. We should have gone to that new place downtown," another man added. "They have live music on Thursdays." Blake's gaze suddenly fixed on the grand piano in the corner, and Lily felt a chill run down her spine even before he spoke. "We don't need to go downtown for entertainment," he said, his voice carrying across the now half-empty restaurant. "They have a perfectly good piano right here." One of his companions laughed. "But no pianist unless you count yourself, and we all remember how that went at the charity gala." Blake's expression shifted to something Lily couldn't quite read. Part amusement, part challenge. He raised his hand, snapping his fingers loudly. "Waitress?" Lily approached their table. "Yes, sir? Can I bring you anything else?" "Yes," Blake said, leaning back in his seat. "Some entertainment. That piano looks lonely." "I'm sorry, sir, we don't have a pianist scheduled tonight. I'd be happy to put on some background music through our sound system." No. Blake waved his hand dismissively. "I want live music. You play for us, the request, no, the command hung in the air." Lily felt her cheeks grow warm as the other patrons turned to look. "I'm afraid that's not possible, sir. Staff aren't permitted to—" "I'm sure your manager would make an exception," Blake interrupted, his gaze drifting meaningfully toward Paul, who was hovering nearby, clearly eavesdropping. "Wouldn't you, Paul, is it?" Paul stepped forward, a nervous smile plastered on his face. "Mr. Wilson, our piano is primarily decorative. I'm not sure any of our staff are trained musicians." "I don't care if she's trained," Blake said with a dismissive laugh. "It would just be amusing to see. Consider it part of the night's entertainment. I'm sure your waitress can manage chopsticks at the very least." His friends chuckled, and Lily felt her stomach knot. This wasn't about music. This was about power, about making her perform like a circus animal for their amusement. "Actually," Paul began, his voice tight, "we have a strict policy about the piano." "I'll double our bill," Blake interrupted, not even looking at Paul anymore, his eyes fixed on Lily. "If she plays something, anything." The restaurant had fallen eerily quiet. Lily could feel everyone watching, the other diners, the staff, even the busboy who had paused mid-clear. She knew what this meant to Paul. A doubled bill from the Wilson table would more than make up for a slow week. She also knew what refusing might cost her. Paul cleared his throat. "Lily, perhaps just a short piece?" She wanted to disappear, to melt into the polished floor. But then she thought of Grandma Rose, of the pile of bills waiting at home, of the possibility of a doubled tip from a table that had already spent a small fortune. "Of course," she said quietly, "if that's what Mr. Wilson wants." Blake's smile widened, triumphant. His companions shifted in their seats, eager for the show, for her humiliation. They expected her to stumble, to plink out some childish tune while they snickered behind their wine glasses. As she walked toward the piano, Lily's heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. The distance seemed to stretch forever, each step bringing her closer to what they all thought would be her moment of shame. What none of them knew, not Blake Wilson with all his money, not Paul with his anxious smile, not even Tina, who was watching with sympathy from across the room, was that the piano had been Lily's first love, long before she ever put on a waitress uniform. They didn't know about the countless hours she had practiced throughout her childhood, the competitions she had won, the scholarship she had earned but couldn't accept. They didn't know that sometimes, on her days off, she would sit at the old upright piano in Grandma Rose's living room, playing softly so as not to disturb her rest. They didn't know that music had been her lifeline through grief and hardship, through dreams deferred and hopes put on hold. As she reached the piano and gently lifted the cover from the keys, Lily took a deep breath. The familiar black and white pattern greeted her like an old friend. Behind her, she could hear Blake Wilson and his friends whispering, already amused by what they assumed would be an awkward performance. Her fingers hovered over the keys. In that moment, she made a decision. If they wanted a show, she would give them one they'd never forget. The restaurant had fallen silent. All eyes were on Lily as she sat at the grand piano, her waitress uniform looking oddly out of place against the polished ebony. She could feel Blake Wilson's smug gaze boring into her back, waiting for the entertainment he had demanded. His friends had shifted in their seats, wine glasses poised mid-air, ready for the show. Lily closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Any day now," called one of the men from Blake's table, triggering a round of snickering. Paul, the manager, hovered anxiously near the kitchen door. Tina shot Lily a sympathetic glance from across the room. The other diners had stopped eating, their attention drawn to the unexpected drama unfolding before them. Lily placed her hands on the keys, feeling the cool ivory beneath her fingertips. It had been months since she'd played on a piano this fine. The old upright at Grandma Rose's house was woefully out of tune, with 3 keys that stuck and a pedal that squeaked. This instrument was a masterpiece by comparison. For a fleeting moment, Lily considered playing something simple, maybe a basic tune that would satisfy Blake's demand without revealing too much of herself. But then she thought about the look on his face, the casual cruelty with which he had put her in this position, and something shifted inside her. Her fingers began to move. The first notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune floated through the restaurant, gentle, delicate, like raindrops on water. Lily started slowly, letting her muscle memory guide her through the familiar piece. The piano responded beautifully to her touch, each note ringing clear and true in the hushed space. Behind her, she heard a glass being set down too quickly. Someone gasped softly. As the piece progressed, Lily allowed herself to be carried away by the music, her hands flowing across the keyboard with increasing confidence. The gentle beginning gave way to cascading arpeggios, her fingers dancing across the keys with a grace that belied her years away from serious practice. She had played this piece at her final recital before Grandma Rose got sick, before life had forced her to set aside her dreams of music school. Back then, her teacher had told her she played it with unusual sensitivity for someone so young. Now, with years of life's hardships behind her, Lily found new depths in the music, a bittersweet longing that resonated through every note. The restaurant had become so quiet that Lily could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the kitchen staff had paused their work, appearing silently at the doorway to listen. As the final notes of Clair de Lune faded into silence, Lily kept her eyes closed, holding on to the feeling for just a moment longer. Then she heard it, a single person starting to applaud, then another, and suddenly the whole restaurant erupted in enthusiastic applause. Lily turned on the bench to find the entire dining room on their feet, everyone except Blake Wilson and his party, who sat frozen in their booth, expressions ranging from shock to disbelief. "Play another," called an elderly gentleman from a nearby table. "Yes, please," echoed a woman by the window. Lily glanced at Paul, who seemed torn between professional decorum and the obvious approval of the patrons. He gave a small, bewildered nod. Turning back to the piano, Lily considered what to play next. Something inside her wanted to show Blake Wilson exactly what he had unwittingly unleashed. She launched into Chopin's Fantaisie Impromptu, a piece that required technical skill and emotional range that few amateur pianists could manage. Her fingers flew across the keys, the rapid notes tumbling over one another in controlled chaos. She had always loved this piece for the way it mirrored her own inner life, moments of frenetic energy giving way to passages of heartbreaking tenderness, before building again to a triumphant conclusion. As she played, Lily forgot about Blake Wilson. She forgot about the restaurant and the waiting tables and the unpaid bills. For the first time in years, she was just a musician again, speaking the language that had once been as natural to her as breathing. When she finally finished the Chopin piece, the applause was even louder than before. Several diners had taken out their phones and were recording her performance. An older couple near the piano were openly wiping away tears. "Where did you study?" asked a distinguished-looking woman who had approached the piano. "I didn't." "Not formally," Lily answered, feeling strangely shy now. "I had lessons growing up, but—" "She works here." Blake Wilson's voice cut through the moment. He had risen from his table and was walking toward the piano, his expression unreadable. "Our waitress is apparently a hidden virtuoso." The way he said "our waitress" made it clear he still viewed her as staff, as someone beneath him, despite what she had just demonstrated. But there was something else in his voice, too. A grudging respect, perhaps, or at least surprise. "Young lady," said the distinguished woman, ignoring Blake completely, "I'm Diane Fletcher, Dean of Music at the State University. I would very much like to speak with you about your playing." Lily's heart skipped a beat. Diane Fletcher was a name she recognized. A renowned pianist before she had become an educator, someone whose recordings Lily had studied and admired. Thank you, but I have tables to attend to," Lily said, glancing at Paul. "Your tables are fine," Paul said quickly, seeming to have recovered from his shock. "Take a moment. This is exceptional." Blake Wilson had reached the piano by now. Up close, Lily could see that his casual arrogance had been replaced by something more complex. Confusion, perhaps, at having his expectations so thoroughly upended. "Where did you learn to play like that?" he asked, his voice lower now, meant just for her. "My grandmother taught me the basics when I was little," Lily replied, meeting his gaze directly. "Then I had a teacher in high school. I practiced whenever I could." "You're not just a waitress," he said, and it wasn't a question. "I'm many things," Lily answered simply. "We all are." People were gathering around the piano now. Other diners, staff members, even the chef in his white coat. The impromptu recital had transformed the stuffy restaurant into something warmer, more communal. "Would you play something else?" asked a young girl who couldn't have been more than 10, looking at Lily with undisguised admiration. Lily smiled at her. "What would you like to hear?" "Do you know any movie music?" the girl asked hopefully. "I know some," Lily nodded, thinking quickly. She launched into a medley of familiar film themes, starting with the gentle, wistful melody from Up that always made her think of Grandma Rose, then transitioning into more recognizable tunes that had the young girl beaming with recognition. As she played, Lily became aware that Blake Wilson had returned to his table and was speaking intently with his companions. Occasionally, they would glance in her direction, their earlier mockery replaced by intense curiosity. When she finished the movie medley, Lily stood from the piano bench. "I should really get back to work," she said, though part of her wished she could stay and play all night. "Your job right now is to keep playing," Paul announced to her surprise. "Consider yourself our entertainment for the evening. With pay," he added quickly. The diners applauded this decision, and Lily felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Joy at being able to play, confusion at the sudden turn of events, and a lingering anger at Blake Wilson for putting her in this position in the first place, even if it had led to something unexpectedly wonderful. As she returned to the piano bench, Lily noticed that Blake had left his table and was speaking with Paul near the entrance. Money appeared to change hands, more than would be necessary to cover even their extravagant bill. Paul was nodding enthusiastically at whatever Blake was saying. Pushing her curiosity aside, Lily turned back to the piano. If this was her night to play, she would make the most of it. She began a Gershwin piece that had always been one of her favorites, playful and jazzy, with runs that showed off her technical skill while remaining accessible to casual listeners. The restaurant had transformed completely from the quiet, formal establishment it had been earlier in the evening. People from different tables were talking to each other now, united by the unexpected musical interlude. Wine flowed more freely, laughter came more easily, and even the staff seemed more relaxed despite the disruption to their normal routine. When Blake Wilson and his party finally prepared to leave an hour later, he paused by the piano during a break between songs. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly, so that only Lily could hear. She looked up at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "I made an assumption about you," he continued. I was wrong. Yes, you were, Lily agreed, not making it easy for him. A small smile played at the corner of his mouth. Fair enough. He placed a business card on top of the piano. When you're finished here tonight, call this number. I have a proposition for you that might interest a musician of your caliber. Before Lily could respond, he turned and walked away, joining his friends who were waiting by the door. As they left, Lily noticed that the woman who had been most dismissive earlier glanced back with an expression that looked almost like envy. Diane Fletcher, the music dean, was still waiting patiently nearby. I'll stay until you're finished, she said warmly. We have much to discuss about your future if you're interested. Lily nodded, a lump forming in her throat. Future. The word seemed to hang in the air like a promise. She turned back to the piano and began to play again, this time choosing Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, its haunting first movement speaking to the strange, transformative evening that had unfolded from what was meant to be a cruel joke. As her fingers moved across the keys, Lily thought about Grandma Rose, who had sacrificed so much to give her this gift. She thought about the conservatory acceptance letter in her drawer at home. She thought about Blake Wilson's business card and Diane Fletcher's offer to talk. For the first time in years, possibilities stretched before her like an open road. All because someone had tried to humiliate her, not knowing that they were instead setting her free. Lily woke the next morning to the sound of her phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. Blinking away sleep, she grabbed it and saw 15 missed calls, dozens of text messages and notifications from social media accounts she rarely used. For a moment she couldn't understand what was happening. Then the events of the previous night came rushing back. Lily, are you awake? Her grandmother's voice called from the living room. There's something on the computer you need to see. Still in her pajamas, Lily hurried to the small living room where Grandma Rose sat at their old desktop computer, her gray hair uncombed, eyes bright with excitement. Look at this, Rose said, pointing at the screen. You've gone viral, sweetheart. On the screen was a video titled Waitress. Forced to play piano by rude customer, what happens next will amaze you. The view count was already over 200,000. Lily sank into a chair beside her grandmother, watching as someone's shaky phone footage showed her sitting at the restaurant's grand piano, launching into Debussy's Clair de Lune. The video captured the stunned expressions of diners, the gradual shift from skepticism to amazement on their faces, and the thunderous applause that followed. I had no idea anyone was recording, Lily whispered. The internet is in love with you, Rose said, scrolling through comments. Look at what people are saying. The comments ranged from, this brought tears to my eyes, to, someone get this girl a recording contract. And the way that rich guy's face changed when she started playing, priceless. Lily's phone buzzed again. This time she answered, hello? Lily, it's Paul from the restaurant. Have you seen what's happening online? I'm looking at it now, she said, still trying to process everything. I've had calls from 3 local news stations wanting to interview you, Paul said, his voice vibrating with excitement. And we've been booked solid for tonight. People asking specifically if the piano waitress will be playing again. Lily's mind raced. I don't know, Paul, this is all so sudden. I'll double your wages if you'll play tonight, he interrupted. Actually, triple, and you won't have to wait tables. Just play the piano. People are calling it the best thing that's ever happened to Rosewood. After hanging up with Paul, Lily sat quietly, trying to make sense of how quickly her life was changing. Her grandmother reached over and took her hand. This is what you've always deserved, Rose said gently. A chance to share your gift. Lily squeezed her grandmother's fingers. I never thought it would happen like this. Life rarely follows the path we expect, Rose said with a small smile. But that doesn't mean it's the wrong path. Lily's phone buzzed yet again, a number she didn't recognize. Hesitantly, she answered. Is this Lily, the pianist from Rosewood Restaurant? Asked a smooth professional voice. Yes, this is Lily. My name is Thomas Reynolds from Harmony Records. We specialize in classical and jazz recordings. One of our talent scouts sent me your video this morning, and I must say I was extremely impressed. Would you be interested in discussing potential opportunities with our label? Lily's breath caught in her throat. Yes, I would. After scheduling a meeting with the record executive for later that week, Lily remembered the business card Blake Wilson had given her the night before. She dug through her purse and found it. Sleek black cardstock with silver lettering. displaying only his name, phone number, and the logo of his tech company, Horizon Innovations. She turned the card over in her fingers, debating whether to call. The man had tried to humiliate her after all. But she was also curious about his proposition. After a moment's hesitation, she dialed the number. To her surprise, Blake himself answered rather than an assistant. Blake Wilson speaking. "This is Lily, from the restaurant last night." There was a pause. "Lily, I'm glad you called." His voice sounded different from the previous night, less arrogant, more measured. "I hope you'll allow me to apologize again for my behavior. It was inexcusable." "Yes, it was," Lily agreed, unwilling to let him off the hook too easily. "Fair enough." She could hear the smile in his voice. "Have you had a chance to consider my proposition?" "You never actually told me what it was," Lily pointed out. "Right." Blake cleared his throat. "Well, in addition to Horizon Innovations, I run a foundation that provides funding for the arts. We offer scholarships to promising musicians, particularly those who might otherwise be overlooked by traditional institutions due to economic or social barriers." Lily's heartbeat quickened. "And I would like to offer you a full scholarship to the music school of your choice, along with a stipend for living expenses and medical care for your grandmother." "No strings attached." Lily nearly dropped the phone. "Why would you do that?" "You don't even know me. Let's just say I'm trying to balance my karma," Blake replied. "What I did last night, putting you on the spot like that, it was cruel and thoughtless. But it also revealed something extraordinary that might have remained hidden otherwise. I'd like to be part of what happens next." "I don't need charity," Lily said, though her mind was racing with possibilities. "It's not charity," Blake insisted. "It's investment in talent. My foundation does this all the time. We just usually have a more conventional selection process." By the time Lily hung up, she had agreed to meet with Blake's foundation director the following day to discuss details. Her head was spinning with the sudden rush of opportunities. "What did he say?" Rose asked when Lily returned to the living room. As Lily explained Blake's offer, her grandmother's eyes filled with tears. "I always knew your playing would open doors," Rose said. "I just never imagined they'd all open at once." That evening, Lily returned to Rosewood Restaurant, not in her waitress uniform, but in a simple black dress she'd worn to a cousin's wedding years before. The restaurant was packed, with people standing in the entryway hoping for cancellations. When she walked in, a murmur of recognition swept through the crowd. Paul rushed over, beaming. "We're completely booked. And look, we've moved the piano to center stage." He gestured to where the grand piano now stood in the middle of the dining room, spotlight focused on its gleaming surface. Diane Fletcher, the music dean she'd met the previous night, was seated at a table near the piano with several colleagues. She waved warmly at Lily. At another table sat a man Lily assumed must be Thomas Reynolds from Harmony Records, based on the business card he'd sent ahead with a bouquet of flowers to her home. As she made her way to the piano, diners applauded. Some held up phones ready to capture more footage. Lily felt a strange mix of nerves and excitement, so different from the dread she'd experienced just 24 hours earlier when forced to perform. "Thank you all for coming," she said softly as she took her seat at the bench. "I'm still getting used to being on this side of the restaurant." A gentle laugh rippled through the crowd. For the next 2 hours, Lily played everything from Bach to Gershwin to Billy Joel. She took requests, chatted with the audience between pieces, and felt herself growing more comfortable in this new role with each passing minute. It was as if she'd stepped into a parallel universe, one where her passion was her profession, not something squeezed into stolen moments between shifts and caregiving duties. During a break, while sipping water at the bar, Lily noticed a familiar figure enter the restaurant. Blake Wilson, without his entourage this time, spoke briefly with the hostess and then took a seat at a small table in the corner, far less ostentatious than his booth from the night before. Their eyes met across the room. He gave her a small nod, which she returned after a moment's hesitation. When she returned to the piano, Lily found herself playing a piece she'd composed years ago but never performed publicly. A gentle, wistful melody that reflected the complex emotions of the past 2 days. As the final notes faded, she looked up to see Blake watching intently, a thoughtful expression on his face. After her performance, as the crowd gradually dispersed, Lily found herself surrounded by well-wishers. Diane Fletcher discussing scholarship possibilities, Thomas Reynolds talking about recording sessions, and regular customers who'd known her only as their waitress now asking for autographs. "You played beautifully," said a quiet voice behind her. Blake Wilson had approached while she was speaking with Diane. "Thank you," Lily replied, surprised by his subdued manner. "Our foundation director is looking forward to meeting with you tomorrow," he said. "She'll explain all the options available to you." "I appreciate that," Lily said carefully. "Though I'm finding I suddenly have many options to consider," Blake nodded. "As you should. Your talent deserves recognition." He paused, seeming to struggle with what to say next. "I know my behavior last night was unforgivable, but I hope you know that my offer comes with no expectations. Whatever path you choose, the scholarship is yours if you want it." Before Lily could respond, her phone rang. Grandma Rose calling to check how the evening had gone. "I need to take this," she told Blake. "Of course." He stepped away, leaving her to her conversation. As Lily told her grandmother about the magical evening, she watched Blake exit the restaurant alone, a far cry from his boisterous entrance with his entourage the night before. She couldn't help wondering what had prompted his change in demeanor. Genuine remorse or just damage control after being caught on video acting poorly. Later that night, as Lily drove home, she passed the community center where she'd taken her first piano lessons as a child. On impulse, she pulled into the parking lot and sat looking at the darkened building. So much had changed in just 24 hours. She had gone from a waitress with buried dreams to a musician with seemingly limitless opportunities. Record deals, scholarships, media attention, all because someone had tried to humiliate her and failed spectacularly. Life really did work in mysterious ways. As she started her car to head home, Lily realized that whatever came next, whether she accepted Blake's scholarship, Diane Fletcher's offer, or the record deal, she would never again allow her gift to remain hidden. The piano had always been her voice, her truest form of expression. It had taken a cruel joke to remind her of that, but now that she remembered, she would never forget again. The road ahead might be uncertain, but for the first time in years, it was also filled with possibility, and for tonight that was enough. 1 month had passed since the night that changed everything. Lily sat in the waiting room of Harmony Records, nervously tapping her fingers against her knee in an unconscious rhythm. The walls around her were decorated with gold and platinum albums from artists she had grown up admiring. It seemed surreal that she was here, about to discuss her own recording contract. The past 4 weeks had been a whirlwind. The video of her playing at Rosewood had racked up millions of views and spawned dozens of news stories with headlines like, "Waitress, pianist takes internet by storm and Millionaire's mean joke backfires." Beautifully. She'd been interviewed by local TV stations and even made a brief appearance on a national morning show via video. Rosewood Restaurant had transformed her from server to nightly performer, and every evening the place was packed with people coming to hear the piano waitress play. The tips she received now in a single night often exceeded what she used to make in 2 weeks of serving tables. But the most significant change was in how Lily thought of herself. After years of pushing her identity as a musician to the background, she was reclaiming it, allowing herself to be the person she had always wanted to be before life's responsibilities had forced her onto a different path. "Miss Walsh, Thomas will see you now," said the receptionist, interrupting her thoughts. Lily gathered her purse and the folder containing the contract she'd been sent to review. She followed the receptionist down a hallway lined with more gold records and into a spacious corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Thomas Reynolds rose from behind his desk with a warm smile. He was younger than Lily had expected for an executive, perhaps in his early 40s, with kind eyes and an easy manner that had made their previous meetings comfortable despite the high stakes. "Lily, wonderful to see you again. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine, thank you," Lily replied, taking a seat in one of the plush chairs across from his desk. "So," Thomas said, sitting back down, "have you had a chance to review the contract?" Lily nodded. "I have. And first I want to thank you for such a generous offer. I never imagined I'd be in this position." Thomas waved away her thanks. "Talent like yours comes along rarely. We'd be fools not to recognize it." He leaned forward slightly. "But I sense there's a but coming?" Lily smiled. He was perceptive. Not exactly a but, more of a question. The contract specifies that my first album would be classical pieces, Debussy, Chopin, Bach. I was wondering if there might be room for some of my original compositions as well. Thomas's eyebrows rose slightly. You compose too? I've been writing music since I was 12, Lily admitted. Nothing formal. I've never had any training in composition, but I have notebooks full of pieces I've written over the years. I'd love to hear some of them, Thomas said, looking genuinely intrigued. Perhaps we could discuss a second album of original work, depending on how the first one performs. By the time Lily left the Harmony Records building, she had a signed contract in her bag and a date set for her first professional recording session. As she walked to her car, she called Grandma Rose to share the news. They loved the idea of including my own compositions, Lily told her grandmother excitedly. Not for the first album, but Thomas thinks we could do a full album of my work if the classical recordings do well. Of course they loved your compositions, Rose said warmly. I've been telling you for years how special your music is. Now the world will get to hear it too. Lily's next stop was the university, where she had a meeting with Diane Fletcher. Since their first encounter at Rosewood, Diane had become a mentor of sorts, helping Lily navigate the sudden flood of opportunities and offering honest advice about the music world. As Lily walked across the campus, she couldn't help but think about the path not taken. The acceptance letter to the conservatory that still sat in her drawer at home. The dreams she had set aside when Grandma Rose got sick. Now, at 26, she was being offered a second chance at the education she had missed. Diane was waiting in her office, a space filled with books, sheet music, and a beautiful upright piano in the corner. How did the meeting at Harmony go? Diane asked as soon as Lily was seated. I signed the contract, Lily said, unable to keep the smile from her face. We start recording next month. Wonderful news. Diane clapped her hands together. And have you made a decision about our scholarship offer? The university had offered Lily a place in their prestigious music program, with a full scholarship and flexible scheduling that would accommodate her recording commitments. It was an incredibly generous arrangement, one that would allow her to develop her technical skills and musical knowledge while pursuing her newfound professional opportunities. I have, Lily said, taking a deep breath. I'd like to accept. I've always regretted not continuing my education, and this feels like a chance to fill in those gaps. Diane beamed. I'm thrilled to hear it. You have extraordinary natural talent, Lily, but with proper training, there's truly no limit to what you might achieve. They spent the next hour discussing Lily's schedule for the coming semester and which professors she would be working with. As they talked, Lily found herself getting excited about learning again, about being challenged and pushed to grow beyond the self-taught techniques she'd developed over the years. As she was leaving the music building, Lily's phone rang with a number she now recognized. Blake Wilson. Hello? She answered, stepping to the side of the walkway to take the call. Lily, it's Blake. How are you? Good, actually great, she replied. I just signed my recording contract with Harmony and accepted the university's scholarship offer. That's fantastic news, Blake said, and he sounded genuinely pleased. Actually, that's partly why I'm calling. The foundation is hosting a benefit concert next month to raise money for music education in underserved schools. We were hoping you might consider performing. Lily hesitated. Her relationship with Blake remained complicated. His foundation had been true to its word, setting up a fund for Grandma Rose's medical expenses and offering Lily a scholarship if she chose not to accept the university's offer. He had been respectful of her boundaries and hadn't attempted to use his generosity to pressure her in any way. Yet she couldn't quite forget how they had met, his casual cruelty that night at the restaurant, the way he had tried to humiliate her for his own amusement. Even if it had accidentally led to good things, the memory still stung. It would mean a lot to the kids the foundation supports, Blake added, seeming to sense her hesitation. And of course, we'd pay your standard performance fee. I'll think about it, Lily said finally. Can I let you know next week? Of course. Take all the time you need. After hanging up, Lily drove to her final appointment of the day, a meeting with a real estate agent. With her new income from performing at Rosewood, the advance from Harmony Records, and the scholarship covering her education costs, Lily was finally in a position to move herself and Grandma Rose to a more comfortable home, one without stairs that were becoming increasingly difficult for Rose to navigate. The real estate agent, a cheerful woman named Val, showed her a small but charming house just 10 minutes from both the university and Rosewood. It had a ramp instead of front steps, wide doorways that could accommodate Rose's walker, and, most importantly, a sunny living room with the perfect spot for a piano. "What do you think?" Val asked as they stood in that living room, sunlight streaming through the bay window. Lily could already picture it. Grandma Rose reading in the window seat, herself at a piano right where they stood, the sound of music filling the space. A real home, not just a place to crash between shifts. "I love it," Lily said simply. "How soon could we move in?" By the time Lily arrived at Rosewood that evening for her performance, she felt as though she had lived a lifetime in a single day. So much was changing so quickly. It was overwhelming, yet exciting too. Paul greeted her with his now familiar enthusiasm. "Full house again tonight," he announced proudly. "And guess who's here? That producer from the morning show, the national one. She loved your interview so much she came to see you in person." Lily nodded, trying to take it all in. A month ago, her biggest concern had been whether she'd make enough in tips to cover the electric bill. Now people were flying in to hear her play. As she made her way to the piano, diners applauded. Some faces had become familiar, local music lovers who came regularly to hear her perform. Others were tourists or fans who had seen her viral video and wanted to experience her playing in person. Instead of starting with her usual classical piece, Lily decided to begin with something different tonight, one of her own compositions, a melody she had written during Grandma Rose's first hospital stay 3 years ago. It was a piece about hope in dark times, about finding beauty amid pain. As her fingers moved across the keys, Lily thought about the strange journey that had brought her here. A cruel joke meant to humiliate her had instead set her free. A man who had seen her as nothing but a server was now asking her to perform at his foundation's benefit concert. Life really did move in mysterious ways. After her first set, during her break, Lily found a quiet corner and pulled out her phone. She scrolled to Blake's number and typed a message. "I'll play at your benefit concert, on one condition, that the event includes a scholarship specifically for musicians who've had to delay or abandon their education due to family responsibilities. People like me shouldn't have to rely on a viral video to get a second chance." Blake's response came almost immediately. "Done, and I'll personally match every dollar raised for that scholarship fund." Lily smiled to herself as she put away her phone and returned to the piano. As she took her seat at the bench, she glanced out at the audience, a room full of strangers who had come to hear her play. Who would have thought that her voice, silenced for so long by circumstance, would now reach so many? She placed her fingers on the keys and began to play another of her original compositions, this one about new beginnings, about doors opening where walls once stood. As the music filled the room, Lily knew with absolute certainty that regardless of where this journey took her next, recording studios, university classrooms, concert halls, she would never again allow her gift to remain hidden. Her talent, once a private joy and then a distant memory, was now her future, and what a future it promised to be. 6 months later, Lily stood backstage at Carnegie Hall, her heart racing as she listened to the murmur of the audience filing into the legendary venue. She peeked through the curtain at the magnificent Steinway Grand Piano Waiting Center stage, illuminated by soft golden lights. The hall was nearly full, a sea of faces all there to hear her play. "Nervous?" asked a familiar voice behind her. Lily turned to find Grandma Rose approaching slowly with her walker, looking elegant in a deep blue dress they had chosen together for this special night. Terrified, Lily admitted with a small laugh. "I never imagined I'd be playing here of all places." Rose reached out and took her granddaughter's hand. "I did." Her eyes shimmered with tears of pride. "From the first time I heard you play when you were just 7 years old. I knew then what the world knows now." Lily bent down to hug her grandmother, careful not to wrinkle either of their concert attire. "None of this would have happened without you," she whispered. "No," Rose corrected gently. "This happened because of you, your talent, your perseverance, your heart. I just made sure you had piano lessons." A stagehand appeared, clipboard in hand. "5 minutes, Ms. Walsh," Lily nodded, taking a deep breath. So much had changed in the 6 months since that fateful night at Rosewood Restaurant. Her debut album, Hidden Talents, had been released by Harmony Records just 8 weeks ago, a collection of classical pieces interspersed with 3 of her own compositions. The response had been overwhelming. Critics praised her remarkable sensitivity and extraordinary technical precision coupled with rare emotional depth. The album had climbed to the top of the classical charts and was crossing over to mainstream success in a way that surprised everyone in the industry. Meanwhile, Lily had completed her first semester at the university, studying with renowned professors who helped refine her natural talent. Her composition professor had been particularly impressed, encouraging Lily to expand her original works into a full symphony, which was now being considered by the city's Philharmonic Orchestra. She and Grandma Rose had moved into their new home, a charming house filled with light and music. Rose's health had improved considerably now that she had proper care, a combination of better medical treatment, less stress, and perhaps most importantly, the joy of seeing her granddaughter thriving. And tonight was the culmination of it all. Lily's Carnegie Hall debut, a benefit concert for the Blake Wilson Foundation for Musical Education, with all proceeds going to their new Second Chance Scholarship Fund for musicians who had delayed or abandoned their education due to family responsibilities. Lily. She turned to see Blake Wilson approaching, looking almost unrecognizable from the arrogant man who had demanded she play at Rosewood 6 months ago. The experience seemed to have changed him as much as it had changed her, though in different ways. "The hall is packed," he said with a genuine smile. "We've already raised over $300,000 for the scholarship fund, and that's before adding my matching contribution." Lily felt a wave of satisfaction. "That means a lot of second chances." "Thanks to you," Blake said. He hesitated, then added, "I know I've said it before, but I want to say again how sorry I am for how we met. It was cruel and thoughtless, and It's okay," Lily interrupted gently. "I've forgiven you, and look what came of it." She gestured toward the stage. "Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best places." Blake nodded, seeming to understand that she wasn't just being polite. She had genuinely moved beyond that initial hurt. Their relationship had evolved into a respectful partnership, focused on giving others the opportunities that had so nearly passed Lily by. 2 minutes, called the stagehand. "I should find my seat," Blake said. "Your grandmother has the best one in the house, front row center, but they saved one next to her for me." After he left, Lily took a final moment alone before her performance. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from a little girl playing on a second-hand upright, to a waitress hiding her talent, to this stage that had hosted the greatest musicians in the world. "It's time," Ms. Walsh, the stagehand, announced. Lily straightened her shoulders and walked onto the stage. The applause that greeted her was thunderous, filling the historic hall. She spotted Grandma Rose in the front row, beaming with pride, with Blake beside her clapping enthusiastically. Diane Fletcher from the university was there too, along with Thomas from the record label and even Paul from Rosewood Restaurant. As the applause subsided, Lily took her seat at the piano. Looking out at the audience, she decided to break from her planned program for a moment. "Before I begin," she said into the microphone positioned near the piano, "I'd like to share a quick story." The hall fell silent, everyone eager to hear from the waitress-turned-pianist whose story had captivated so many. 6 months ago, I was working a double shift at a restaurant, trying to make enough money to pay for my grandmother's medication. I had given up on my dream of being a musician years before, though I still played at home whenever I could. Music was my escape, my comfort, but I never thought it could be my future. She paused, looking down at the keys before her. Then one night, a customer tried to embarrass me by demanding I play the restaurant's piano. He thought it would be funny to watch me fail. Instead, it became the moment that changed everything. Lily glanced toward Blake, who nodded slightly, accepting his role in the story without shame. "I've learned that sometimes life gives us second chances in the strangest ways. Tonight, every dollar raised goes to help other musicians who, like me, had to set their dreams aside. People whose talents might otherwise remain hidden. I can't think of a better way to celebrate this remarkable journey I've been on." With that, Lily turned to the piano and began to play. She started with Debussy's Clair de Lune, the piece that had begun it all that night at Rosewood, but this time on one of the finest instruments in the world, in one of its most prestigious venues. As her fingers moved across the keys, Lily felt a sense of homecoming. No matter where she played, a restaurant piano, her grandmother's old upright, or this magnificent Steinway, Music had always been where she truly belonged. For the next hour, she performed pieces from her album, receiving standing ovations after each one. Critics would later write about the refreshing emotional honesty of her playing, the way she made even the most technically challenging works feel accessible and deeply moving. For the final piece of the evening, Lily took the microphone once more. To close tonight's program, I'd like to play something special, a new composition I've been working on. It's called Full Circle, and it's dedicated to my grandmother, Rose, who sacrificed everything to give me music and to everyone who believes in second chances. The piece began softly, tentatively, like a question being asked. It built slowly, incorporating subtle echoes of the classical work she'd played earlier, but with modern harmonies that made them entirely her own. As it progressed, the melody gained confidence, blooming into something joyful and triumphant before resolving into a peaceful, contented conclusion. When the final notes faded, there was a moment of complete silence. Then the audience erupted, rising to their feet in a unanimous standing ovation that seemed to shake the very foundations of the hall. Lily stood, bowing deeply, tears streaming down her face as rose petals began raining onto the stage, a tribute orchestrated by her fellow students from the university. She looked to the front row where Grandma Rose was standing with assistance from Blake, her face shining with tears and pride. As Lily took her final bow and the curtain began to fall, she caught sight of something that made her smile through her tears. In the back of the hall, wearing their Rosewood restaurant uniforms, stood Tina, Paul, and the entire staff who had worked with her all those years. They had closed the restaurant for the night to be here, showing their support for their former colleague. Later, at the reception following the concert, Lily found herself surrounded by well-wishers, music critics, industry executives, fellow musicians. But she excused herself when she spotted the Rosewood staff hovering uncertainly at the edge of the elegant gathering. "You came," she said, hugging Tina and then Paul. "Wouldn't have missed it for the world," Paul said proudly, "though I have to say we miss having our piano waitress. The replacement pianist we hired just isn't the same." Lily laughed. "Maybe I'll come back and play a special show sometime. For old time's sake." "We'll hold you to that," Tina said. "Once a Rosewood family member, always a Rosewood family member." As the evening wound down, Lily found a quiet moment alone with Grandma Rose, who was beginning to tire from the excitement. "Happy?" Rose asked simply, studying her granddaughter's face. "More than I ever thought possible," Lily replied truthfully. "But do you know what the best part is?" Rose shook her head, waiting. "It's knowing that because of tonight, other people will get their chance too. People like me who thought their dreams were over." Rose squeezed her hand. "That's how you know you're using your gift the right way, when it creates ripples that help others." As they prepared to leave, Blake approached one last time. "The foundation board just met," he said, his eyes bright with excitement. "Based on tonight's success, we've decided to make the Second Chance Scholarship permanent. 5 musicians each year, full funding for education and living expenses." Lily felt tears spring to her eyes again. "That's incredible news. We're calling it the Rose Walsh Second Chance Fund," Blake added, nodding to Grandma Rose. "If that's all right with you both." Rose's hand flew to her heart. "I would be honored," she said softly. As their car pulled away from Carnegie Hall later that night, Lily looked back at the iconic building, her name still illuminated on the marquee. 6 months ago, she had been a waitress with buried dreams, playing in secret on an out-of-tune piano. Now she was a recorded artist with a Carnegie Hall debut, university training, and a foundation named after her grandmother that would help others like her for years to come. All because someone had tried to humiliate her and instead had set her free. Life, Lily reflected as she held her grandmother's hand, had a remarkable way of bringing things full circle. Sometimes the cruelest joke could become the greatest gift if you had the courage to play your heart out when given the chance.